Hey everyone, so just a quick video based on warming up your hips when it comes to any kind of high impact exercises, or if you're going to do any running or any plyometrics. I'm just going to show you how you should warm up. That will help get you started to get better flexion extension through your hips themselves. Firstly, you want to understand the hips. So what I got here, this is when your hips are in neutral. This one represents like the posterior pelvic tilt. So as you can see, the hips are shifting in and under, and the lumbar spine is pulling into flexion, affecting the position of my femur bone and affecting those muscles. So as these muscles become elongated from my back, they become weaker. The muscles in my core become crunched and a little bit more tighter. And as you can see here, with the position tilting, when I go to do like a squat, I'm already in a compromised position, so I'm not going to get the optimum range of motion. And what happens when I try to get that optimum range of motion, my lower back will kick in, and that's where you'll get that butt wink that people with a slight posterior pelvic tilt will have. It's not a bad thing, and you can work with it, but there's drills you can go through to help reduce that and over time build up a bit better stable movement pattern without having to hinder. Because if you keep training high impact with a severe posterior pelvic tilt, you are more likely to injure yourself and everything becomes less comfortable. This one here represents the anterior pelvic tilt, so you're tilting the other way, and then your lower back is shortening, and that's where your core is weaker and you're getting stretched out. Everything's getting tucked in and back behind you. So typically when you relate this one to a squat, people are going to lean forward a lot more because their core is a lot weaker and they're already into that tilting position. So again, you're not getting the ideal movement pattern, and usually this one's associated with like you get a little bit of knee valgus, so knees rolling inward. So it's really important to understand these, especially when it comes to any high impact exercises. Could be running, could be plyometrics, could be stuff to kettlebells, it could be heavy lifting. Anything that's hip driving or hip mobility wise, if you're not getting that true flexion extension, you could potentially injure yourself. And when you're in the gym, you want everything to be hard, but you also want it to be comfortably hard so you can keep doing it and see results. What you don't want to do is injure yourself. So that's where I'm gonna take you through just a quick rundown of how to warm up the hips. And just while I'm on it, you can, as a PT, you can base your whole business just on the whole hip moving itself, because it affects the ankle, it affects the shoulders, so it plays a big part in the way you move anatomically all around. So make sure you're looking after your hips. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to just show you quick little drills to go through before you do any kind of exercise that you should always do for your hips. So we've got activate exercises and integrate exercise, but firstly you want to go through the typical self-myofascial release kind of exercises. So when it comes to the hips and those distortion patterns, you want to focus on a few areas. So firstly, you probably want to roll out your calves using the foam roller. So you want to make sure you're getting on the bulk of the calf first, and you're not just going so. You want to actually feel the spots where it's quite tight and then build up a slight little roll into it. Also, you want to not neglect the inside and the outside, because they're really important, because if these muscles become tight or weak or restricted, you're more likely to roll your ankle in or out, and that will affect the shift in the knee, which also affects the shift in the hips. So start off with rolling out the calves, move on up to the hamstrings, roll out through the hamstrings. Again, taking your time, searching for those spots that are quite sensitive and quite tight. Bit of time rolling into it, and then build up some momentum. Then what you want to do after that is work up a little bit higher into your lats. So right under your armpit, rest in there, and just start rolling in. You don't want to go for a big movement. You can get a little bit into your rib cage, into the serratus, but you want to stay on that lat and just roll in. It will be quite uncomfortable if you're quite tight there. And reason being for the lats, because if you look anatomically on the muscle chart here, they play a big part in the way the lower back and the hips tie in, so they kind of like cross over. So that's why it's really important to get into the lats themselves. Now, another area, probably one of the most important areas to roll out when you're dealing with your hips, is the old inside thigh. So this one's quite awkward. Lay down in front of you, bring your leg over, and just push on in. And again, you want to search for those spots that are really tight, push into it, and then start moving a bit more. This one will be uncomfortable, but it is a go-to when you're going through like any kind of exercises that provide explosive hip driving actions. So we've gone through like the self-myofascial release side. What you want to do then is like lengthen those muscles that we just did. So you want to go for a typical hamstring stretch, so lying flat on the ground and pulling your hamstrings back. So if I was to demonstrate that, what I like to do is use a band, tie it around, pull back, and pull back as far as you can. Try to keep your knee locked up. What you can do to be creative is push that toe towards the opposite shoulder. Try to keep your lower back on the ground while you bring it over, and point your toes up as well. And you're coming across while pulling your hamstring. So you want to treat that like a traditional static stretch, so roughly about 30 seconds to a minute. Really depends on how comfortable it is and yeah, how tight you've been feeling and how good you've been rolling out beforehand. So you want to static stretch that, using a band is ideal. Then you want to go through and then activate. So you've got the Cobra Superman, which is going to affect the erector spinae, which is along the back. And we've got the glute kick, which is going to cause activation through the glutes, because if your glutes are quite weak, they want to be woken up before you do any driving motions. So with the Cobra or the Superman, you're going to lie it flat, and you want to be able to extend your spine as much as you can and then bring it back down. It's one of these things where you don't want to go too hard out at first. You want to increase the intensity after a few like reps, and then start adding in a few holds when you're extended, then bring it back down. With these activation drills, you want to keep them low impact as your body's warming up into it. The glute kick, this one's like best done with a cable machine, but I'm going to show you a version on the floor. So what you want to do is lie flat. What you don't want to do is rotate your hips too much. So you want to make sure it's a little movement, just straight up and down. And this is going to help like work the glutes and get them awake. So you're dealing with any synergist dominance that you could potentially have if you have any of those distortion patterns. So you're waking up the glutes, they're active, and when you go to do like a kettlebell swing, you're feeling your glutes take the drive. And we got the integrated movements. So integrated movement patterns is like pretty much more functional type of way to work out. So you're using more than one joint, more than one muscle group, which is pretty ideal to prep yourself for any type of compound exercises. So we've got the banded hip flex. I'm going to give you a brief rundown of that. Sorry about the up and down, kind of like off the floor stuff with the camera. Anyway, got a band, always ideal to use the band. You can use this on a cable machine just as well. So I've got a small little hole. What I want to do is pull my feet in. Cool. And what I've got here is I want to try to flex my hips and bring them up. It's probably best if I show from a distance. So here we go. Sorry, just adjusting the camera. Don't want it all wonky, so come out over here. Yeah. Feet on. If you want to, you can always use a wall to balance on. Lift yourself up and bring it down. Cool. And you want to make sure that you're not overarching when you do that, and you're not compensating the move. So that's why you keep it low impact. You could also do this without the band, just raising up your hip flexors like that. And your weight there can be quite stressful. So if you are quite weak there, then just keep it band free. Then over time, like use a band to help wake them up and integrate their movement. So you do both sides, like about 3 sets. And then we're at the squat with the overhead press. Again, keeping the intensity quite low. You're getting more than one muscle group working together, so just excuse the little dumbbells I got here. So I'm going to give you a brief rundown. Really simple, done it multiple times. Just squat, overhead press, because you're using multiple joints, encouraging warm-ups for compound lifts or any kind of explosive intensity kind of lifting you're going to be doing, or if you're doing something like explosive type of cardio. So good way to integrate the hips and the upper body all in one. So feet shoulder width apart, squat down, then come up and press. And just remember to keep everything close to the midline. And once you've like done all the foam rolling, done all the stretching, done all the activation, and you get to this integrated part, you start to feel the right muscle groups working, and that can help combat any distortions you have when it comes to anterior pelvic tilt, posterior pelvic tilt, or even distortions when it comes to like spine, more upper, more superior version. But anyway, so that's it's not a be all end all, but it is a good way to warm up your hip joint especially, to work proper flexion extension and to get all those muscles working across those joints. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Cool.